Record. All right. Well, good morning, Patrick. Are you set to go? We'll go ahead and kick it off here.
Yep, I'm ready anytime.
Very good, very good. Well, everyone, welcome to week 2 of Gardening in the Air on October 10th. And my name is Chris Enroth. I will be moderating along with Tracy Mulliken today these sessions on the fruit track. We are horticulture staff with University of Illinois Extension. So we would ask that you please keep your microphones muted and your videos off. As much as we'd love to see your smiling faces, these are being recorded. We will be sending these recordings out once they are posted online, closed captioned, in the whole 9 yards. But since we don't have photo releases for you all, we prefer you keep those videos off. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Patrick O'Malley. Patrick is a commercial specialist, field specialist in the field of horticulture. So Patrick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm a fruit and vegetable field specialist with Iowa State University Extension. I'm based over in Iowa City, which is the home of the University of Iowa, yet I am with Iowa State University, which is based in Ames, Iowa. So it's a little confusing there that I live in Iowa City where the University of Iowa is, but I'm an Iowa State person. And I'd like to thank University of Illinois for helping put this whole program together. I think it's a great idea, the states collaborating together. And in the past, I've actually had a fruit and vegetable program together with Illinois in the Quad Cities, but we haven't had that for the last few years. But anyway, yeah, I've got a background in fruits and vegetables. I actually got my undergraduate degree at Iowa State University, and I did graduate degrees at University of Hawaii, where I worked on fruits and vegetables there as well. I really enjoyed my time in Hawaii. So anyway, I'd like to start talking about some of these different fruits, and my understanding is that some of the later presentations today will cover some of the more common fruits. I will touch on those slightly and try not to disrupt what the future presenters will do, and then maybe concentrate more on the like the title of the presentation, the underutilized and lesser known fruit. So anyway, let me get going here. I apologize here I don't seem to be able to advance the slides right at this moment. Does anybody have any suggestions what may be going on?
I would just run it as you would on your screen since you're sharing your screen. What mode are you in on your PowerPoint?
I'm on presentation. Let me try again. Oh, okay, now it works. All right, I should have put this slide up while I was doing the introduction here. Is the slide that is currently up is one that we were required to put on all our presentations now about equal opportunity and so forth. And if you want more information on that, there's a website at the bottom of this slide that you can go to. Again, this would have been a better slide for the introduction, so you could watch that for a while and copy down that website if you want it. I think it's been on long enough now that if you really want to get into the full non-discrimination and equal opportunity statement, you've had that opportunity. Let's move on. Okay, a few basic things to go to when we're growing these various fruits is what dictates whether we can grow the fruits or not in our area, whether it's Illinois, Iowa, whatever part of the Midwest. And probably the most important thing is the winter low temperatures. Depending on how cold you get, whether it's -20 Fahrenheit, -30, -35 Fahrenheit, -10 Fahrenheit, that kind of dictates what is the limit of certain fruits that we can grow in the upper Midwest. And I think you've all seen the plant hardiness maps before. They were updated, I believe, about 2012. And you can see Illinois and Iowa both there. And the majority of Iowa and at least half of Illinois is in what we call zone 5A or 5B. 5A is where the minimum temperature, and we're not talking wind chill at all, we're just actual air temperature, is -20 to -15 for 5A, and for 5B it's -15 to -10. You've got a good share of Illinois that's actually in 6A, where the minimum temperature is like -10 to -5. And I don't know if you can see it from this picture or not, but there's a county in Iowa, the very tip where Iowa dips down on the east side. There's a tiny little tip of Lee County in Iowa that's also part of Zone 6. So anyway, assuming there's not many people, if any, on this program from extreme southern Illinois, we're basically looking zones 6A, 5B, and 5A. And basically all the fruits I'm talking about today can be grown in those zones. Occasionally, though, we do have situations where temperatures exceed what the average extreme minimum temperature is. So for instance, a couple of years ago here in Iowa, we actually got as low as -35 degrees in along where you can see I think you can kind of see where Des Moines is, and Interstate 80 kind of runs east-west. But along that Interstate 80 corridor, we actually got -35, which is more like zone 3B or 4A. And that did cause some problems with our fruits. That was a very unusual event. But normally these temperatures listed are fairly accurate for minimum temperatures that we experience in normal winters. When we dig fruit trees, it's always a good idea to make sure that we've got good drainage. All these fruits that I'm going to talk about today really require at least decent drainage. So if you grow them in a heavy clay or an area where water pools after the rain, they're not going to do very well. Maybe the two exceptions would be one being the pawpaw tree is still likes good drainage, but can tolerate for short terms poor drainage for a week or two. But overall, it still likes good drainage. And if you don't have the best drained soil, sometimes the Asian pears can handle that a little bit better than some of the other fruits that we'll talk about today. And as you can see on the slide, one way you can do is dig a hole 3 feet deep, fill it with water, and see if there's any water present after 3 days. And if there still is, that's not a good sign. So some of the different fruits that we can grow is, here's one I'm not going to really talk about because I'm sure one of the other presenters today will talk about is pear trees. But with our fruit trees, we can do different things. And here's one where the pear is grown in an espalier position. So if you've got limited space, you can flatten it out and have it like a wall and be able to grow fruit. And we can do this with apples and pears and a lot of our different fruit trees. Likewise, I think there's a container gardening fruit class later, but I just wanted to touch briefly on dwarfing. With apple trees, fruit trees, there's a lot of there's semi-dwarf, there's dwarf, there's full-size trees. Like a full-size apple tree can be over 30 feet tall. Some of these dwarf trees can be as little as, in the case of apple, can be as little as 6 feet tall, which we have here. And you can see here we've got a tree that's about 6 feet tall that's in full flower there. Here it is in full fruit, so you get maybe slightly less than a bushel from a small tree. And this is interesting. There's a member of the Midwest Fruit Growers over by the Chicago area that has a bunch of these really dwarf trees, and he's got like a regular residential backyard, and he's got maybe 200 trees in his backyard, but they're all small trees, about 6 feet in height and just a few feet apart. So you can do a lot when you use dwarfing. In the case of apple, there's some choices with the Polish 22, the Emla 27, or the Geneva 65 rootstocks are available out there so that you can get some extreme dwarfing. So that's all I'm really going to mention on apples and pears, because again, I'm sure they're going to be talked about later. Also a pear, though, is the Asian pear. The Asian pear is different than the common pear that we grow that we refer to as the European pear. The European pears are basically when you eat them are kind of soft in texture at that point in time, not crunchy like an apple, where in the case of Asian pear, they are crunchy like an apple. And Asian pears have a tendency to have extreme amount of flowers and fruit. And so when they do fruit, they're going to need thinning, but they make a wonderful flower display in the spring. I've always said that why grow a crab apple? I mean, you get a nice flower display in the spring, and then you get some really, for the most part, you get some really lousy small fruit. Where some of these other fruit trees, like an Asian pear, you just get that wonderful flower display, and then that's followed by fruit. Here we got some small fruit, some bigger fruit. I believe this one is a cultivar called Hasui, and it has kind of a golden russet of the fruit. The Asian pears seem to be very cold hardy. Even a couple years ago when we got the minus 35, they still produced some. The crop was down slightly, but extremely hardy. Other than maybe the far parts of northern Iowa, they may not do as well, but for all of Illinois and most of Iowa, they should do fine. Here's again some fruit of those. Probably there's the Asian pears, again, crispy, nice flavor to them. They do have maybe two drawbacks, not cold hardiness, but the drawbacks would be, one is because of the good flower display, they will set an awful lot of fruit. And if you don't thin the fruit, the flavor is going to be kind of watery tasting. So you only want about one fruit per about every 5 or 6 inches of a tree branch. If you get too many, their fruit are going to be smaller and they're not going to have the good flavor. If you thin them properly, they're going to be bigger in size and really have that nice sweet flavor. If you've never had an Asian pear, you really need to try them. And if you go to the grocery store, you'll usually find them, but they are very expensive. They'll oftentimes sell for more than $1 a fruit. I've seen them as high as even $5 a fruit. But they're fairly easy to grow. And as far as fruit trees go, Asian pear is more adaptable to growing with a low spray or even an organic program. You'll still get some fruit, whereas oftentimes with apples, especially if you're in an urban area that has a lot of other fruit trees that aren't sprayed, it's sometimes hard to grow apple because of the pressure of the disease and the insects, where the Asian pear, especially ones like this, the Hasui that have a kind of a tough outer skin that kind of repels the insects, it does seem to survive better without, it seems like you can get usable fruit without having to do an intensive type spray program. So if you're trending more towards organic, the Asian pears, especially the russeted type skins like this, are easier to grow. There are other Asian pears that have more of a softer skin that are a little more prone to some of the insect problems, but the golden russeted types are pretty good at repelling the insects. The other problem that we have with Asian pears is they are susceptible to a disease called fire blight. It's a bacterial disease. Apples can get it too, but if you grow Asian pears, you probably want to look at ones that are maybe more, I wouldn't say resistant, but more tolerant to the fire blight. Fire blight's a disease that we usually see in the late spring, early summer, where you start to get the branches start to brown up with the leaves. And Asian pears in general are a little more prone to fire blight than, say, the European pears are. But other than the fire blight and having to thin, the Asian pears are a pretty easy thing to grow. Another fruit, and I don't want to dwell much on this one, is the peach. It's rather exotic in Iowa, but as you get into central to southern Illinois, it's a more common fruit to grow. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be talked about again later today. But the peach is one thing I did want to comment about the peach. It's also a fairly easy fruit to grow. Again, if you're trending more towards the organic, it's a little easier to grow than something like an apple. It doesn't seem to have quite the disease in insects. It still would benefit if you did at least a mild spray program. And then the key point, especially if you're in northern Illinois and in Iowa, is with the peach that the flower buds are killed when the temperature reaches minus 18 Fahrenheit. So this, of the fruits I'm going to talk about today, this is probably the most sensitive one. So basically, if you get one night where for a few hours it gets minus 18 Fahrenheit or lower, and I'm not talking wind chill, the flower buds get killed out. And we had that a couple of years ago when we got minus 35. And we also had a situation also a few years ago where it got down to about minus 20 Fahrenheit. And I know there's a city in Iowa called West Branch that's got a big peach grower, and he basically lost all his fruit. But 10 miles away in Iowa City, we had the urban effect and only got down to about maybe minus 17, and we still had a peach crop in the city. But in the urban area, in the rural area, we lost the crop. That's kind of a key point there is if you're growing peaches, you want to grow them up on a hill and high and try to do everything you can to avoid that minus 18 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, moving on. I'm not sure if this one will be touched on later or not, is the apricot. And apricots aren't as sensitive as peach as far as the winter temperatures, so they can take the minus 20 and still produce fruit. The apricot, though, the downside to the apricot is the fact that it's probably one of the earliest blooming of our fruit trees. And so because it blooms so early, it's subject to some of the spring frosts. For instance, I've had a couple years where my apricot trees bloomed at the end of March. And one year they did that was 2012. And then later on in well into April, I think the latter part of April, we got some hard freezes and that wiped out the crop. But about several years earlier than that, I also had the apricot bloom in late March, and we never really had a hard freeze after that, and I did get a nice crop of apricots. In a so-called normal year, at least in the area I'm located, they bloom about mid-April. But that's probably the limiting factor. I've also seen that it's kind of interesting that up in Minnesota, even Minneapolis area, sometimes they have better luck with apricots because by the time the apricots start blooming up there, the weather kind of changes and warms up and they're less subject to hard freezes. But overall, the apricot is maybe fairly unreliable because any of the hard freezes that we get after they bloom or the flower buds are at what we call the popcorn stage, you may lose them. And typically I get apricots, I probably get about half the years I actually get apricots. And going back to the peach is I probably get 3 years out of 5 I get peaches. Either they might also get a spring frost, although they don't bloom as early as the apricot, and of course the winter killed temperatures. So peaches I get about 3 years out of 5, apricots about 2.5 years out of 5. And Asian pears, I probably get almost 5 years out of 5. Looking at some of the other fruits, here we have more of a shrub, are the currants. And you can see from the pictures that we've got red currants, we've got white currants, we've got black currants. And these are nice, these are fruits about the size of a pea. There's a small plant there. Here's a cultivar white imperial in the fruits. And these fruits, they're, like I said, they're about the size of a pea, and they kind of grow on these stems, and they are actually easy to pick because you don't have to pick each individual fruit. You just take your hand and just slide it along there, and you'll get like 10, 12, 15 fruit at one time. And then you can put them in your bowl. They do have some little seeds inside, but they have kind of a nice tart, a pleasantly tart flavor to them. You can make a juice out of them. Of course, like any fruit, you can adulterate them with sugar and make jams and jellies. But they're a nice plant. They're a shrub. They range from about 3 to 5 feet in height. They used to be fairly common in older neighborhoods where you'd see them kind of as a border between two houses, would have a small currant shrub hedge between them. Related to the currants are the gooseberries, and with the currants, we don't have any thorns, so it's nice not to have thorns with the currants. We saw in the earlier picture there is the black currant, and the black currant is an alternate host to the white pine blister rust. And I'm not sure if we've got a picture of, maybe not. But anyway, the white pine blister rust is a disease. It's an alternating fungal disease that goes between currants and white pine trees. So it can adversely affect the white pine trees. So the idea is not to plant black currants under the or near a white pine, say, windbreak. The white currants and the red currants, for the most part, don't share this alternate fungal host disease. The black currants do, but not all black currants, so it's possible to get a black currant that's resistant to the white pine blister rust. The gooseberry, like I say, does have thorns. It also has kind of a tart flavor. I would strongly suggest getting the commercial cultivars of gooseberry, not just the wild ones that grow in the woods. The wild ones are a much smaller fruit versus the commercial ones, which would be slightly larger than a pea as far as fruit size goes. And gooseberry has kind of a nice flavor. Again, it's tart, but it's very good for cooking too. People will make gooseberry pies. The gooseberries and the currants are self-pollinated, so you can actually just have one bush and get fruit off of them. Just going back briefly here is, I showed the apricots. With the apricots, some are self-pollinating, some are not. It depends on which cultivars you have. Peaches are self-pollinating, and Asian pears are ones that you do need to have two different types of Asian pear to get fruit. And surprisingly, there's enough of an overlap of bloom that a European pear and an Asian pear can actually pollinate each other. Now, speaking of pollination, what they did was they crossed the gooseberry and the black currant and came up with something called the yustaberry. And the yustaberry is a purple berry that's actually bigger than what we would find with a gooseberry or a currant. It may be the size of maybe a small marble. However, the yustaberry, being a cross between the currant and the gooseberry, doesn't seem to be fully fertile, and because of that, they don't seem to produce a lot of fruit. Although they can self-pollinate, it's probably best to have several yustaberries with you planted if you want to try to get a crop. And the picture we have here is pretty representative of a pretty sparse amount of fruits on these. They are good flavored fruits and maybe a little bit sweeter than what we would get with the currant or the gooseberry, but until they get this one bitter cultivars, it's one that may be more of a novelty at this point than a big producer of fruit. There's a close-up of the fruit of the yustaberry. Oh, excuse me, I thought I had this somewhere. This is an example of the white pine blister rust. There's some spores on the underside of the leaf of the currant, of the black currant, and then we see how the fungal mass will engulf a twig of the white pine and can cause a decline of your white pine. So again, the susceptible black currants together with the white pine is not a good combination. Blueberry, I debated whether to include this or not because in one sense it's a fairly common fruit, but on the other hand, it's not grown that much. And the main reason for that is related to the pH of the soil. Unlike our other fruits, which I guess I neglected to mention at this time, basically everything else I'm talking about today likes a pH somewhere between 5.5 and 7. The blueberry would be the exception, that it does want a much more acidic pH, and ideally we're looking at around 4.5 pH. And if you look at your native soils of Iowa and Illinois, you're very rarely going to find a pH of 4.5. It's usually going to be at least 5.5 or higher. And so the only way to really successfully grow blueberries is to change the pH of that soil. There's some cultivars of blueberries you can use to get it to increase the seasonality of the blueberries. You can basically get blueberries from any time from about July through early September. And they do respond well to a mulch. Here we have a sawdust mulch, but you can use chopped leaves, wood chip mulch is good. But the key thing with blueberries is you need to get that pH down to that 4.5. Blueberries also have a nice fall color. They get the purple leaves, and they retain that for several weeks. So it's a nice ornamental bush too. The blueberries get somewhere in the neighborhood of if you're using high bush blueberries, they're neighborhood of like 4 to 6 feet in height. Now, as far as changing the pH of the soil, there's basically 2 ways to do that. One is that you add elemental sulfur. It's like a yellow powder that you add to the soil, and you want to put that on at least a year before planting the blueberries. And there's publications on how to modify the soil. It'll show you what your starting pH is and how to get it down to say 4.5 by how much sulfur you need to put on per 100 square feet. That's one method to reduce the pH to make it more adaptable to blueberries. The other way is, let's say you start off with a pH of about 6.5, 7, is you come in and you excavate your hole where you're going to plant the blueberry. And so you make the hole about 2.5 feet wide and about 2 feet deep. And you take that soil and put it in a pile, and then you also buy Canadian sphagnum peat moss. That's that brown compressed material. It's dried, usually in bales. You hydrate that, and then you mix equal parts Canadian sphagnum peat moss and the native soil that you dug out and plant the blueberry in that. The Canadian sphagnum peat moss has a base pH of about 3.9. And so if you use equal parts soil and the sphagnum peat moss, you come out pretty close to 4.5 or 5, depending on your starting pH. But that's the other way to make it more conducive to blueberries. I don't think I want to talk too much more about blueberries because that may or may not be discussed in the future talks. From here on in, I don't think any of the other presenters are going to talk about these fruits at all. Next one is the chameleon plant, or the one that goes by many different names, and that would be the Juneberry, sometimes called its genus Amelanchier. It's also known as serviceberry. It's also known as Saskatoon. So it has very many different names. And this can be either a large shrub or a small multi-stem tree. It also has a nice flower display in the spring, white flowers. It is in the same plant family as apples and pears. Very fragrant flowers when they bloom in the spring. And then they produce purple to reddish fruit. Listed here, I guess on the slide, is Thyssen is a larger fruit. The picture actually isn't Thyssen. They're bigger than that. They're a little more purple colored. Thyssen probably produces the bigger fruit of the Juneberries. And as one of the many names it's called suggests, is they usually ripen about mid-June, hence the name Juneberry. They're a sweet fruit. They're, I would say, similar to blueberry, although maybe the texture is a little softer, and they're sweet, but I would prefer maybe the flavor of blueberry slightly over the Juneberry, but it is a nice treat. And they do come on before blueberries, where blueberries, we're basically looking sometime in July when you get your first blueberries, where these are mid-June. And so they're a nice treat a little earlier in the year. They're easy to grow, and they're actually, to some degree, they're native. There is actually a native serviceberry in both Iowa and Illinois. So you can, it's not a real common tree, but you can sometimes even find them in the woods. Here's a fruit that we oftentimes see along wood edges, maybe partially shaded fence rows, are the elderberry. The elderberry fruit is one, unlike most of the other fruits I'm going to talk about, is one that you don't really eat fresh off the plant. This is one that really needs to be cooked and turned into a jam or a jelly. They also, I found out fairly recently that the flowers are sometimes used. They actually make a type of liqueur out of the flowers of elderberry. There's, if you're interested in elderberries, they actually have done a lot of work with them in Missouri. University of Missouri has done acquired different cultivars and actually has a commercial industry of elderberries. We can grow them here in Iowa and Illinois quite easily, but again, they're ones that you just can't grab fresh elderberries and eat them. They're not good in that condition. On the bright side, they are a native plant, and it's always good to grow natives. All right, here's one that I think should be more utilized, would be the hardy kiwi. Hardy kiwi is related to the kiwi that you buy in the store, those brownish fruits, the ones that you have to peel off the brown kind of furry covering on them. But the hardy kiwi is adaptable to our more northern climate. The regular kiwi, I'm not sure what the cutoff is. They're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit, where the hardy kiwi can take down to about -20. I've even seen it growing in parts of northern Iowa. The hardy kiwi is actually a vine. And here's an ornamental version. And you can treat it sort of like a grape. You might want to put it on a trellis. The hardy kiwi is, I mentioned a little bit on some of the other fruits, pollination. The hardy kiwi, you actually have separate vines. They're either male or they're female. The picture you're looking at now is actually a male vine. There's one of the species of hardy kiwi has a variegated leaf in the male vine. So you need a male vine and a female vine to get fruit. The ratio, the suggested ratio is about 1 male vine to about 5 female vines. I had a friend who had some hardy kiwis, which I really liked, and so I took some of the hardy kiwis and I extracted the seeds and I vernalized them and so forth, and I got about 20 seeds to germinate of the hardy kiwi. And so I started to grow them out, and eventually I ended up with about 10 hardy kiwis that I planted in my yard along a fence. And so I grew those, and from seed, it takes 6-7 years to actually get them to the flowering stage. If you buy plants, you're still looking at maybe 3, 4, 5 years to get them to flower. But anyway, I grew some from seed, and so I started off with 10 plants, and then unfortunately, various family members over the years thought they were a weed or some plant that didn't belong there, and some sort of invasive, and they inadvertently killed them. And so I eventually ended up with only 2 plants. And sure enough, down the road, about 6-7 years, they flowered. And I thought, oh, great, I'm finally getting my hardy kiwis. And it turned out that both plants were male, and so I didn't get the fruit off of them. But anyway, they're an interesting vine that they can be used as an ornamental, but they will produce fruit, and the fruit is about the size of a grape, maybe a small grape. But the good news is that you don't have to peel them. You can just eat them as is. They're unlike the one you buy at the store. The peel is not objectionable at all. So it's certainly something, worth trying. And here's here's a small tree that I've done some work on, is the pawpaw. And you can see in full sun, they will get a shape like kind of a rounded shape like this. And you can also see, and if you've got any pawpaw trees around you now, they're just starting to show really brilliant fall color. They get a really bright yellow leaf in the fall. But the main reason we grow them is indeed for the fruit. Now, if they can, unlike most fruits, they can tolerate shade. And the more shaded area they are, the more narrow the tree is, more telephone pole shaped, especially if it's in full shade. We've got some in timber stands here in Iowa where they're almost completely shaded and they almost look like a telephone pole, but in full sun, they'll have a more rounded shape like we see here, and they'll produce more fruit in full sun. In the spring, they flower and they have kind of a maroon looking flower, purplish maroon type flower. And supposedly, according to literature, carrion flies pollinate the pawpaw. But I've grown pawpaws for over 20 years and I'm not seeing carrion flies around them. I am seeing various butterflies in the spring seem to be around them when they bloom. And I'm guessing that the butterflies are actually doing the pollination. And pawpaw would be similar to like an Asian pear where you need two different cultivars to cross-pollinate. So if you have just one tree, although the flowers are perfect and have female and male parts within them, they usually will not self-pollinate. So you do need to have two different trees to make sure that you get good cross-pollination on them. Here's a cluster of fruit, and these fruits are about maybe 3 or 4 inches long and 2 or 3 inches wide. Here you can see some peeled and unpeeled fruit. You don't want to eat the peel of the pawpaw. It has kind of a bad taste to it. And you can see the peeled fruit, and it's kind of a creamy, yellowish, vanilla type colored fruit. It's a sweet dessert fruit. It has a very pleasant flavor. With pawpaws, you'll find that there are commercial varieties, cultivars out there that you can get, and those would be the preferred route because those are going to have the good flavor. They do grow wild. In Iowa, we find a pocket of them in southeast and southwest Iowa. In Illinois, basically, as you get south of Interstate 80, they'll become much more prevalent. I don't think we have anybody from Missouri, but basically anywhere in Missouri, you can hardly throw a stone without hitting a pawpaw tree. But we do find them in the wild. But the problem is a lot, not all, but a lot of the wild ones will have kind of a pleasant taste when you bite into them, but maybe a somewhat bitter aftertaste, where the cultivars seem to avoid that. So we've got this sweet dessert fruit, kind of a taste between a mango and a banana. And that's one of the common names for pawpaw is like Missouri banana or Indiana banana. We don't say Iowa banana, I guess, or Illinois banana, because it may be not as common. And here we have a fruit that actually kind of cracked open on its own and sealed up, but I thought this was a good representation of the seeds inside the fruit. So you've got these hard brown compressed seeds, and an average fruit will have somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 8 to 12 of these seeds within it. You don't want to eat the seeds, but oftentimes you'll pop them in your mouth because the pulp that we're eating will be attached to the seeds, and you just spit them out like you would a watermelon. But it is a good dessert fruit. There's a lot of potential with pawpaw. Again, the good fall color with the pawpaw. One thing I would suggest if you grow pawpaws, again, you need to have 2 different ones to make sure that you get that you get fruit off of them. You may want to put them in an area where around the trees can be mowed, because they do have a propensity to sucker out. And so if you got them in a big mulch bed, you may start off with 2 pawpaw trees and you may end up with a whole grove of pawpaw trees because of the suckering. So I like to have them in an area where they can be mowed around and that you can mow off the suckers so they don't take up your whole yard. But they are an interesting tree. Let's see if I put down here. A couple other things with the pawpaw is I had a trial with those over the years, and I don't think it's on your handout, but what I would recommend would be, there's a cultivar called Shenandoah would be a good one. Also, there's another one, Susquehanna. Also has a good flavored pawpaw, would be a good choice. And if you want a really big pawpaw, there's one called Potomac. And if you notice a trend there, these better pawpaws all have the names of rivers out in the eastern part of the United States. There was a breeder named Neil Peterson who did a lot of work with pawpaws, and he named many of them after rivers. One more to mention would be NC1 is also a good hardy pawpaw that you might like. And with the pawpaw, what I found is, and this would hold true for comparable locations in Illinois, that in Iowa, the southern half is very adaptable to pawpaws. They seem to grow very well in the southern half of Iowa. I had a small trial up in northern Iowa, which would be much further than any regions in Illinois. This would be equivalent to maybe Madison, Wisconsin. The pawpaw trees would survive there, but they would only fruit maybe every 2 or 3 years, and the fruit size seemed to be much diminished. Where, like I say, in the southern half of Iowa, they seem to do fine. We get full-size fruit. Things like Shenandoah and the Susquehanna do very well for us. And I'm maybe not this type of person, but some people like to grow pawpaws, not so much for the fruit or the fall color, but because they're the host of the zebra swallowtail butterfly. And so if you're into butterflies, it's kind of a neat plant because it is the preferred host of the zebra swallowtail. And I have seen them fluttering around, and I know people that grow the pawpaw just for the butterfly. Okay, looking at some other fruits here is, there's a type of dogwood called Cornelian cherry. And Cornus is the genus of dogwood, where most of the other dogwood fruits we wouldn't even think about eating. The Cornelian cherry is one that we can grow. It's pretty hardy. You see it has a very ornamental yellow flower, and it does bloom fairly early in the spring, but yet the flower seems to be pretty tough and handle some of those hard freezes. You see the fruit on the right there, the red fruit. It also has a yellow version as well. This is not one of my favorite fruits, and it does have a large seed in the center like you would find with a conventional cherry. And when you harvest them, you really want the fruit not to be firm and hard like we see here, but just starting to soften up and maybe wrinkle a little bit. It does have sort of a stringent tart flavor. I would probably grow it more for an ornamental than for the fruit itself, but think of it as an ornamental with the nice flowers and the nice leaves that you can also eat something off of it. I wouldn't particularly just grow it for the fruit alone because they're really not that good. Here we have persimmon. Persimmons are trees, and they can be very large trees. And similar to what we had with the hardy kiwi, we've got separate male and female plants. So you've got male persimmon trees and you've got female persimmon trees. So there's some exceptions, but for the most part, you need to have one of each to get fruit off your persimmons. And the persimmon fruits are maybe not quite the size of a golf ball, maybe slightly smaller than a golf ball. They ripen there's cultivar differences, but generally they ripen late in the fall. Usually you'll want to wait till after a hard frost in the fall and the fruit to start to wrinkle up before you eat them. Otherwise, they're very astringent in flavor. They are used quite a bit in cooking, and people are working on new cultivars of this, ones that maybe ripen a little early than, say, the end of October, early November. Ones that ripen, say even in September, are being worked on, and you might want to stay tuned on that. A little side fact here with persimmon is, for the older viewers here, is at one time in golf, the woods in a golf set were always made from persimmon wood. Last 20 plus years, they've gone to different composite material, but prior to that, they were always made out of persimmon wood. And the persimmon that we grow is the species Virginiana. That's basically the American persimmon. There's also the Asian persimmon that you may buy at the store that's a much bigger fruit. And unfortunately, unless maybe you're in the extreme southern tip of Illinois, that's not really something we can grow. Here's a fruit, the aronia. The common name is chokeberry, but there's been a bit of a commercial industry developed to grow aronia, and the commercial industry really didn't want the trade name chokeberry, and so they just went with the genus, which is aronia, and called it the aronia berry. And these are fruit that, dark purple fruit, very healthy for you, have a nice flower display in the spring, also have a nice fall color in the fall. These ripen pretty much during the month, late August into September, and they kind of hang on the plant, so you can even harvest them in early October. They don't seem to have a whole lot of pests, and again, if you're growing something organic, this would be a good choice. The downside is the fruit right off the bush is not, I don't like to disparage it, and so I don't say it doesn't taste good, I just say it doesn't make my list of top 20 fruits. I actually have kind of acquired a taste to eat them fresh off the bush. They are a bit astringent in nature. If you add sugar or cook them or even freeze them, it does seem to improve the flavor of them. These bushes get about the size, they get 5, 6, 7, 8 feet tall. You can cut them back. You can kind of treat them, if you grow the ornamental lilac, you can kind of treat them like that and periodically cut them back, or take a third of the shoots out each year. But I'm not sure about Illinois. In the case of Iowa, for a commercial industry, they may have been a little bit overplanted, and there hasn't been a real strong market for it. The thought was that co-ops would form and there'd be enough fruit available that some of the big drink companies would buy large quantities of the aronia and incorporate them into their juice. And the drink companies do that now. If you look, a lot of these juices that you buy, fruit juices, will have aronia in it, but they're buying the juice actually from the country Poland. It's at this point in time, it's more economical for them to get it from Poland than to get it from some of the local growers. But they do make kind of a nice ornamental bush, and they do have an edible fruit that, again, you can, if you mix it with something like bananas and put it in a blender, it's actually quite pleasant, and there is a lot of healthy nutrients in the aronia. It does, they are self-pollinated, but it might be beneficial to have at least 2 plants of it. Mulberries. A lot of us think of mulberries as more of a weed, and there are actually 2 main species of mulberry. There's a native one. The rubra species is the native mulberry, known as the red mulberry, versus the white mulberry, which is the really invasive one that we see everywhere. The rubra does have a bigger berry, and is a nice native tree, unlike the white mulberry, which is from Asia. And I shout out to our people in Illinois, is probably the best cultivar of mulberry is the one called Illinois everberry. It has a very big, long fruit. With the mulberries, they're sort of like the persimmon too, is you do need to have 2 trees to get the fruit. Although my understanding is the Illinois everbearing does do some self-pollination. So, but it is if you like mulberries, it is a nice fruit, and I really like that the Illinois everbearing, the fact that the size is big. We're talking maybe as much as 1.5 inches long and maybe at least 3/4 of an inch wide. And again, the red mulberry is native. Here we've got, this would be a non-native, would be the Nanking cherry. It's a member of the cherry family. It has these nice ornamental blooms in the spring. This is also one that's a very early bloomer. And sort of like the Cornelian cherry, the flowers do seem to survive some of the hard freezes that we might have in the spring. So your earliest bloomers would pretty much be the Cornelian cherry, the Nanking cherry, and then maybe the apricots. And then after that, we have some of the other fruits come out. So here we have the flowers. Here we have some fruit of the Nanking cherry, and these are about the size, I would say smaller than a pea. They are a cherry. They're related to the true cherries, and so they've got a hard pit in the center. And they've got kind of a tart, sour taste, although it's pleasant. These are sometimes actually used in windbreaks. And if they become a little bit overgrown, we can cut them back and they can resucker out and use them again. They're an interesting fruit. They make a nice juice if you take them and juice them out. And of course, like anything, you can make jams and jellies out of them. Here's one that I'd seen about in the literature, but never had seen growing, is the Akebia or chocolate vine. And we actually had a master gardener in the Quad Cities who started growing this and showed me her plants and brought some fruit in and so forth. And this is a vine similar to what we'd have with a hardy kiwi, and does do better with cross-pollination to have at least a couple different cultivars of the Akebia vine. So this does need some sort of support or trellis system. And it produces these unique fruits. And these are about, I'd say maybe 5-6 inches long. And they split open when they're fully ripe. And what you eat is not the skin or the peel, but the pulp. The pulp inside there has got a very kind of sweet taste to it. So you eat the pulp, you can either chew on the seeds or spit them out. But the pulp is kind of a unique flavor. It's, I'm not quite sure why it got the name chocolate vine, although sometimes the outer peel will get kind of a darkish color to it, but generally it's more lighter in color that we see here. But it is something that, again, I'd seen in the literature, but never grown myself until I was exposed to it by a master gardener in the Quad Cities. In fact, I should probably give her credit. I doubt she's on the broadcast today, but her name was Sheila Lang. And if you're there, Sheila, thank you very much for showing that to me. Moving on, some other fruits that we can grow would be the high bush cranberry, which produces a reddish, small reddish fruit. That one is very tough to eat raw off the bush. It's actually a type of viburnum. It's probably maybe better used as an ornamental than eating. But some people will eat it. It's not a cranberry. It's just a viburnum that's got a fruit that's maybe more acceptable than some of the other ornamental viburnums, but not a very good flavor to it at all. There's also the sea buckthorn. The sea buckthorn is a very sour tasting fruit. It's orange in color. This is one that's related to some of the invasives like autumn olive. It's probably not one that you want to grow. It's also very thorny. You know, I really don't like to grow things that are thorny, but it's out there. Some people grow it. I'm not a big fan of it. Others would include the Hansen's bush cherry. This is Prunus species, so it's related to our true cherry. This produces a hard red fruit. It's got a pit in it like other cherries do. I've grown this one. I stopped growing it. It's got very poor flavor. It's got a very tart fruit. I just really didn't like the flavor of this one. You could potentially, add the sugar and make the jams and jellies out of it. But although it seemed to produce pretty well, it's a bush. It gets about 5 feet high. I wasn't a big fan of that. Next one where we got the picture there is the blue honeysuckle. It's also known as haskap or honeyberry. This one's got a little bit more potential. It's related to honeysuckle, hence the name blue honeysuckle. But unlike honeysuckle, it doesn't have a round red berry. It's got a blue berry that's kind of oblong in shape. Hopefully you can see that in some of the fruit in the picture there. This is one where you do need to have at least 2 different cultivars to get cross-pollination. And they're doing a lot of work on this one. Kind of the hotbed for breeding of blue honeysuckle is in Saskatchewan, Canada. But they keep coming out with new cultivars that are more improved and improved. These berries ripen, for the most part, in the month of June. They've got a pleasantly sweet taste. I would still prefer blueberries over the blue honeysuckle, but they've got a nice taste to them. I've experimented with them some, and because a lot of the breeding's been done in Saskatchewan, Canada, they don't seem to tolerate the heat and sun that we have here in the upper Midwest as well. And so it seems like this would be a fruit that would be better placed in an area that gets maybe a half-day shade, so they don't get that intense sun. Again, like I mentioned, you do need to have at least 2 different cultivars to grow these, to get fruit off of them. But it's something worth exploring. It's again, they're continually coming up with new and improved cultivars. I mean, 10 years ago, there was very limited selection, and now there's just more and more of these coming out. But it's one, like I say, maybe half-day shade, get the 2 cultivars and give it a shot. It's kind of a unique fruit that not many people grow. And it is a blueberry, but unlike the real blueberry, they're not real sensitive pH-wise. So, something around 6.5 would be sufficient. And finally, I wasn't sure how we'd be doing time-wise, is technically chestnuts are a fruit as well. So I thought I'd end with this, and maybe we'll go ahead and get into questions for the minute or 2 that we have left here. But the Chinese chestnut is, or the hybrid between American and Chinese chestnut, produces a nut that's, I don't know if you can see it. We've got a nut right there of the Chinese chestnut, but a very sweet tasting nut. I know in Iowa and Missouri, a lot of people are growing them, especially the southern half of Iowa and a good share of Missouri. I'm not sure if they're growing much in Illinois. But it's kind of a unique nut. They grow in these burrs, these spiny burrs, and you do need at least 2 trees for cross-pollination. They can become trees about 20, 30 feet tall. But anyway, I know I've got very limited time left, so maybe we should go ahead and go to questions. I'm going to have to stop screen sharing here to see the chat box.
And Patrick, I can make sure that we hit all the questions here too. We do have just a couple minutes. So let's get into a few of these. Our first one here, Patrick, is Denise asks, is there a poisonous elderberry or anything toxic that we need to be looking out for?
I'm not sure if it's poisonous per se, but you don't want to eat them fresh off the bush. You really want to cook them first.
Yeah, they will turn your tongue dry, indeed. On pawpaws, they want to know, if you buy a named cultivar, will it come to you grafted?
Yes, the name cultivars will be grafted on a seedling rootstock.
Very good. And also, Ruth's asking, how quickly will pawpaws grow to fruiting size?
Say you buy a small pawpaw tree that's maybe a foot tall, that's going to take about 6 or 7 years. If you buy one that's, say, maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, we're looking probably 3 or 4 years. If you buy a grafted cultivar, they will fruit a little faster than if you buy a seedling. I really wouldn't recommend seedlings because you might run into that situation where they have the bitter aftertaste.
Very good. Let's see. And also, do wild pawpaws grow next to a cultivated one change the flavor of the fruit at all?
No, if the wild ones were growing near the the cultivar, it wouldn't affect the flavor of the cultivar. What you might find though is you might have wild patches where they may not fruit because it's all one clonal population where it's just suckered out. You really need to have those two cultivars to get the pollination.
All right, and then our last question here, Kim's asking, does the Chinese chestnut have any concern about becoming an invasive species?
That's an interesting question. Initially I would have said no, but I grow a lot of Chinese chestnuts myself, and I do find an occasional seedling chestnut growing where I throw the husk pile or occasionally under the tree. I don't think it would rise to the level of invasiveness, but it can, some of the discarded seeds, the squirrels plant or whatever, can start to grow.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Patrick O'Malley, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing with your knowledge and crossing the borders, so to speak, for all of us. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was nice to have the cooperation between the two states.
Yes, it is. And